Today on Gun Talk Nation, we have Jimmy Hamilton from Vortex Optics. Vortex does pretty much everything when it comes to optics, so we're going to answer a lot of questions that you have. Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by Leupold, Sig Sauer, Hodgdon, the gunpowder people, Armscor, and Silencer Central, Silence Delivered. Hey, welcome into Gun Talk Nation. Today on Gun Talk Nation, we're talking optics. How do you hit anything without optics? I don't know. But we've got Jimmy Hamilton from Vortex Optics on the line. Jimmy, welcome in.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Jimmy, Vortex, I mean, for those who've lived in a cave, explain who you guys are, what you do. You guys kind of cover the waterfront when it comes to optics.
Yeah, we do. So Vortex Optics, we're a sporting optics manufacturer. So if it goes on a gun or you use it out in the field, anything like that, chances are we probably make something along those lines. But yeah, everything from rifle scopes, binoculars, rangefinders, spotting scopes, red dots, and a whole mess of accessories for all of those things as well. So we are a brand in the space. And we've been a brand in the space since pretty much just about the beginning of the 2000s. So going on, I think we're actually hitting our 20-year anniversary this year.
Well, that's a good segue, because something I was starting to mention before we started the actual record of this is how optics have changed over the years. And I think people who grew up with an old school 3 to 9 power, or if you really want to go old school, a fixed 4 power or something like that. Now the optics keep getting more advanced, and sometimes I think us shooters are trying to keep up with how advanced the optics are and keep our learning curve up. I mean, what are some of the things that you guys hear from customers or see maybe in the changes in what's taken place over 20 years with optics?
Boy, I mean, optics have really changed a lot. I think that they were fairly stagnant for a pretty long time, to be really honest. And I think as of late, just you look at the last decade and what's happened, or that last 20 years, you could say, what's happened in the optics industry. It's just been this huge boom. Of course, we've seen a huge boom across the entire firearms industry. Firearms and all their related accessories, I'd say we're also pretty stagnant. I think we've seen a little bit of probably a result of us being, at war with the whole global war on terror. That all happened. That was a thing for many years. And then you had a lot of people that were joining the military, getting out, a lot of veterans who then had used firearms. They'd used all those accessories, and they were kind of interested in maybe carrying on what they'd learned or what they wish they had into the consumer space. So, that was probably a shot in the arm to it, but then also just all the innovation. So just a lot of companies and brands coming out with new stuff that all works together really well. That was a pretty big deal. But I think one of the really, really cool things that I've seen as of late is optics with features that previously would have been reserved for 4-figure price points, now being much more accessible to people, under $1,000 and even well under $1,000.
What type of features are you guys putting into them now?
Yeah, good question. Zero stops, tall exposed turrets that actually dial really accurately and repeatedly. You have more technical reticles in the first focal plane, illuminated reticles. All this stuff is now available to everybody at pretty much nearly any price point, nearly any budget. Everything else is kind of kept up with that too. You could take a scope that you buy for $400, which, isn't chump change, but relatively speaking, if it's got first focal plane illuminated reticle, it's got, 34 mil tube technical. It's got all that stuff. You can slap that on another $400 you can put into the gun. You can get good factory loaded ammo, and you can be shooting out to 1,000 yards repeatedly. That's just like, if anybody would have said that 10 years ago, I think everybody would have said, you're just lying.
It's unheard of. Yeah. Even 20 years ago, which of course, $1,000 20 years ago is different than $1,000 today. $1,000 20 years ago, you couldn't have got to 1,000 yards for your whole gun scope setup. Another area that I feel like we've seen a lot of advancement and change are, well, we started out with the low power variable optics, the LPVOs, if you're in the biz. And then it was like a 1-4, and then it was a 1-6, and then it was a 1-8. And now what do we have?
Yeah. Now we have 1-10s.
You guys have 1-10, that's living in bizarro world. That's like 3-9 it was a 3X erector, right? I mean, but now you're going, wait, that's not possible. Like, how does that even work? How do you fit it all in there? I mean, talk about what you guys have seen with that side of it and what you can do with a 1-10.
Boy, yeah. I mean, that's a question really, if you wanted to get into the like super cool details about it, that's where I'd have to go grab our optical engineer. But I mean, I just know, having seen the evolution of the low power variable, I think at first people were really skeptical about the LPVO. They didn't think that it had any chance to do what the red dot did. I mean, really, when everybody looks at low power variables, they almost forget. They get them because of the fact that they can do more than just be one power. They like the fact that it goes up to 4, 6, 8, or 10. But the first thing everybody wants to know is, what does it look like on one power? Because they want to know if it can replace their red dot. Everybody was very skeptical about that at first. They were thinking, okay, well, if I have to do something that's up close and fast and rely on my optic to still be accurate, I don't want to be lost in the optic. I don't want to be dealing with a complicated reticle. It was all that stuff. And I mean, it took people a long time to just actually finally warm up to red dots. So then we're asking them to maybe even change again. But people really did start to adopt them more and more. I'd say a big market was the competitive market. Competitive shooters started adopting them because they realized. That's a good
point. Like the 3-gunners, when they're having to, in the same course of fire, do 10-yard targets and 400-yard targets. That's where that kind of scope excels.
Absolutely. And we've seen the competitive market spur on the tactical market many times. Sometimes vice versa, but a lot of times your consumer people who aren't in mil LE, they're actually sometimes pushing the boundaries because they can be a little bit more nimble with it. If you go to a competition, you try something new and it doesn't work, your life's not on the line. So, I think people started trying those things and it really started to catch fire. And then, you want to see how far you can take it. Hey, this 1-4 is great, but when I'm shooting targets at 600, it'd be nice if I had a little bit more mag. So then you're like, okay, well, what if we made this thing 1-6? And then it was like, well, you just want to keep seeing how far you can push the envelope. And I mean, now we're at 1-10. We have the Gen 3 Razor 1-10.
Wild.
But the interesting thing with that is that the people have asked, are you guys going to get rid of the Gen 2 Razor 1-6? And the answer to that question is no. That scope's going to stay around for quite some time because it starts to become the Razor Gen 3 1-10. It's just a different kind of optic. Yes, it has one power. In this case, it's first focal plane. And the 1-6 is second focal plane. But I kind of start seeing a scope like that. It's phenomenal at what it does. But it's kind of like a really great mid to long range optic that also happens to have one power. Okay. Whereas the Razor 1-6 is like this absolute incredible experience out of a rifle scope on one power. That's borderline basically dead even with a red dot. Oh, and it can go up to 6 power. So they kind of, it depends on what your primary thing is. That would be what I'd recommend for you. But
people want to have like it be all things to all people, which is kind of against the laws of physics or something like that. I mean,
physics always screws us whenever we think we have a cool idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy, hold on 1 second. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Vortex Optics, American owned, veteran owned, Wisconsin based, and they do everything in optics, but they also do apparel, and they're actually doing a really nice job of it. They have new spring and summer apparel line, and it's ready for any activity that gets you outside. Quick dry technology, and also cover shirt, Trail Creek short, Pursuit Travel Active Socks, warm weather staples like Northern Shift Hoodie, Storm Silencer Rainbreaker for all those bad weather days. Check all that stuff out at vortexoptics.com. Armscor, this STK 100 9mm. This is a gun that I did a blind taste test on. I actually put it in my hands, felt it, shot it. They pointed me in the right direction, made sure I hit the berm, and I liked it without seeing it and even knowing what it was. But it's an aluminum frame. It's a 1911 grip angle, extended beaver tail. So it kind of has all those 1911 style things, but it's not a 1911. It's a striker fired gun, and it has those updates like optics plates and 17 round capacity. The MSRP is $499. You can find out more at armscor.com. Hodgdon, for 75 years, they've been making gunpowder, and they're the largest U.S. supplier of smokeless powder and black powder substitute propellants. They also have a lot of resources on their website, hodgdon.com, hodgdonreloading.com. Check that out. You can learn a lot more about getting into reloading. So, okay, I have a question, because we've also had another movement we've seen over the years is higher magnification and people wanting to shoot longer ranges. And depending on what you're going to do, I mean, if you're going to sit on a bench rest and you're going to try to hit targets at long range, I guess I would say, yeah, get an enormous scope, go for it, whatever. But is there a general rule of thumb as far as how far I plan to shoot and how much magnification I need?
Boy, that's a good question. I mean, for a long time, and actually still it comes up, people think you need basically 1x or 1 power for every 100 yards, you know? Okay. So they'll say, yeah, if you're shooting out to 1,000, you'll need 10 power. I don't think that is wrong per se. But it breaks down because, you know, I've seen people shoot out to 1,000 yards with 6 power, but then I've also been in situations where I've been shooting out to 500 yards and I want to crank it up to 18 power. So it depends a lot on how your shooting is going to be going. So like you said, if you're basically just going to be strictly set up on a bench and you're going to shoot, you know, the tiniest possible groups that you can shoot, F-class competition shooting would come to mind. Now, those guys, you know, depending on what you're talking about within the bench rest F-class area, those guys might be proned out. But the fact of the matter is they're trying to shoot really tiny groups at a long ways away, and they're not doing a whole lot of moving. We have a Golden Eagle rifle scope that goes all the way up to 60 power in that case, you know, but it would be miserable to use that in a PRS type scenario where you're transitioning between targets, you're moving, you're having to find targets real fast. All that stuff would be miserable to be that high in magnification. You know, and then, so it really depends a lot on like how much you want to move around, how much target transition you're going to be doing. Do you need to find targets in your scope before you engage them?
How much weight it's going to be? I mean, you add a lot of glass
around. Exactly. So it can't just be kind of like this distance equals this magnification. There's a lot else that goes into the equation.
That's not a bad rule of thumb. And that's the one I've heard is kind of 1 power for every 100 yards kind of thing. But you kind of touched on it. And I guess it does depend. We talk about, oh, I'm trying to hit it 1,000 yards. Well, when we say hit, are we talking about a 3 foot by 3 foot plate? Or are we talking about, you know, like a Coke can?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
what are you okay with? Do you still want to maintain sub MOA at 1,000 like the guys in F class, or do you want to just hear a ding? And there's nothing wrong with either one of them.
Yeah. No, there's no wrong answer here.
Yeah, there's I mean, hey, if you're shooting, we're all friends.
Yeah. So you guys have the Vortex Edge, and this is different because I don't think I've heard of another company doing this. I mean, tell them about Vortex Edge.
Yeah, Vortex Edge is the firearms training entity within Vortex. So we are headquartered out of our range that's on campus here at Vortex in Barneveld, Wisconsin. So we have 6 full-time instructors currently, and we have a number of different classes that we offer. You can find them all online on our website. Vortex Edge is part of the main Vortex Optics website. But yeah, so we'll train anybody. Honestly, our classes are really, really well designed to be applicable to just about anybody. We have intro classes that are for people who, you know, if you take intro to pistol, carbine, or long range, those are 3 separate classes. if somebody's never touched a gun before, they'll absolutely be just fine in that class, and they'll get a lot of shooting time. It's not just kind of like, sitting and talking. We've got our total shooter pipeline, we call it, which is kind of like pistol 1, 2, 3, carbine 1, 2, 3, long range 1, 2, 3. And I think that the curriculum our guys came up with is very exciting. It's engaging, it's fun, and kind of unique to all the classes that we offer. We keep a pretty small class size, so everybody who takes a class with us gets a lot of one-on-one instructor time. So it's not just kind of like you're on a line with a bunch of other people just kind of getting fed drills to do, and then the instructor's job is to just make sure nobody blows a hole in their foot. Sometimes you can get really great drills from those types of classes, but in this case, we just wanted to put the emphasis on a one-on-one environment. So
is there a typical like length of class, 1-2 days?
Yeah, our intro classes are about like 4 to 5 hours. We don't want to overload anybody, but we get a lot in that time. And then our other classes will go for like a typical 8-hour day. So some of them are just, 1 day. Some of them are multi-day. We have specialty classes that are like 2-day classes, home defense, concealed carry, night vision even. So we kind of run the gamut.
Very cool. And they can find all information about that on your website?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. I wanted to talk about rangefinders, because that's something you guys have also, one of the things I think Vortex seems to do well with is you do optics, but you do all of the optics. Like I don't think of it. There's not really a category that you don't do, right?
Just about. I mean, we don't do the nighttime stuff. I know some people have asked us when we're going to get into night vision and thermal. We don't have anything like that, at least yet. But I can't say if that would happen.
But you're doing rangefinders. Talk about the latest from you guys on that.
Yeah. So, boy, the latest is very exciting because, there was a time really not long ago when we came out with a 1,000-yard rangefinder. It was the Ranger 1000. It was our first one, and we thought that was just like the coolest thing ever. And now our most entry-level rangefinder is a 1,000-yard capable rangefinder. Mm-hmm. So we came out with the Crossfire 1000, super awesome rangefinder, just at like more of an entry-level, budget-minded arena that it plays in. And then you kind of just go up from there. We've got the Diamondback 2000, the Viper 3000. All three of those rangefinders are new in 2022. And then still kind of our flagship pinnacle, we have the Razor 4000. And then of course there's actually even, it doesn't end there because there's the Fury 5000, which is a binocular rangefinder. That's ridiculous. A phenomenal piece. Yeah, I really like that one.
So if somebody's thinking about trying to pick a rangefinder versus a bino rangefinder, I mean, if your buddy said, Jimmy, I've seen that they actually have binoculars that have rangefinder built in, but I'm used to rangefinders. I mean, how does one choose, or where do you go?
Man, it is similar, I think, in some ways to what we were talking about with the whole like rifle scope magnification thing in some ways, because it depends on what you like to carry around with you in the given scenario. The hunting crowd, they usually have a really specific set of binoculars that they want to use. And that set of binoculars may not be one that comes with a rangefinder built in. So they're going to have to go with a monocular style, a little smaller, more portable, lightweight thing kind of off to the side with their binoculars. Or sometimes, they just like to have both things. Those monocular style rangefinders are really nice. They're lightweight. They go anywhere. And they're very capable. The binocular style rangefinder, I think if you kind of want more of like a do-all, you just want to buy one thing and be done with it. That's where I really like those. I also really like the binocular, the Fury. We use it all the time for our long range stuff when we're on the range. It's much easier to set a binocular up on a tripod and just glass with both eyes open and be watching. You can spot trace better with it. You can scan a field of fire, a course of fire, and see target. I just like having both eyes. And then just having that rangefinder right there to just click a button and then see it in the display is super awesome. And then the Fury 5000, you can get it in the AB model, which then has the applied ballistics calculator or computer on board. So then it does a whole bunch of wizardry, and it'll talk to your phone, and it'll give you all kinds of cool data to dial into your scope. So it's phenomenal.
Hey, when we come back, I'm going to give you a tip for when you're spotting scope and doing a lot of spotting. Silencer Central is America's largest silencer dealer. New for 2022, the Banish 46 and the Banish 338. Banish suppressors offer exceptional noise and recoil reduction and adaptable configurations for multiple calibers, from 22 LR up to the mighty 4570 Government. That's right. You can put a silencer on your 4570. If the Banish suppressor does not significantly reduce the report and recoil of your firearm, Silencer Central will buy it back. SilencerCentral.com. Leupold, Performance Red Dots, Delta Point Pro, Delta Point Micro. They're machined and assembled in Oregon and backed by the Leupold Lifetime Guarantee. The Delta Point Pro features a professional-grade optical system, a wide field of view, quick, precise, repeatable adjustments with one MOA click adjustments. The Micro is the most compact concealable red dot on the market, and it mounts quickly and easily into the factory rear sight dovetail. Pretty cool. You can find out more at Leupold.com. Sig Sauer, the new P322 from Sig, is their first U.S. designed and manufactured 22 LR pistol. 21 round capacity, more than any other compact 22 on the market. It's optics ready. It has a thread adapter, single action trigger, and it has interchangeable shoes, fully adjustable fiber optic sights. If you want to see more about the P322, go to sigsauer.com. So Jimmy, I've done a bit of Western hunting. One of the tips that I got being out there is if you're using a spotting scope, when you were talking about binoculars, it kind of made me think about this, is you can get some eye fatigue squinting one eye the whole day. And people use an eye patch. You actually wear an eye patch. You can keep both eyes open even though you're looking through one eye.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Heard of that?
No, that works. That works. I have not done that myself. But I could absolutely see that, on some of those, like you said, on some of those hunts or things like that, you wind up looking through a spotter for a long time. I would want to have as minimal muscle fatigue and strain as possible, especially in your face. When you're
you could literally be on glass for 6-8 hours a day, maybe more. And after a while, you just get this eye fatigue, for sure. Also thinking about the binos that are also rangefinders, certainly that could be helpful. I mean, and then talk about for shooters, the need for a rangefinder. I mean, there's probably people out there who maybe they hunt somewhere where they go, well, I know all the ranges where I am. I mean, what would be, to me, I think sometimes we think we're better at judging distance than we are.
Yeah. I mean, for the hunting community, that's just undoubtedly, I don't even take to the woods around here in Wisconsin, which you think usually your shots can be a little bit closer. Occasionally we'll get it, at least in southern Wisconsin where we're at, we'll get a little bit longer pokes from time to time. But yeah, I'm a terrible judge of distance. So having a rangefinder is essential. And then for the shooting community, I mean, if you go to a range where they have, all the target arrays set up at given 100-yard increments or something like that, that's nice. You should bring out a rangefinder or borrow a buddy sometime though, and just double check that. Cause I mean, for really precision guys, they can tend to find that they can sometimes be off a little bit, it's kind of like a give or take 10 yards, maybe, usually not a big deal, but it can be if you're trying to get really precise. But if you ever have unknown distance, targets of any kind to deal with, usually you find that in hunting, but sometimes in just regular recreational shooting, classes too, we'll throw that at you. You need it. You can't do it without.
I'll tell you another thing a rangefinder will help you with is teaching yourself what a distance looks like, because you could do this at your home or wherever, your home base, where you're just basically guessing distances and then checking yourself and then starting to train yourself. Oh, that's what 140 yards looks like. But also things look different when you travel. So if you're from the woods of Pennsylvania and you go out to Utah on a mountain hunt you're like, I don't know, that's probably what, 400 yards. And if you range it, it might be 800 because you're just not used to these wide open spaces. And then, so when you get to a place, if you're on a traveling hunt, start taking your rangefinder, especially a handheld monocular, easy to kind of carry around one. That's one where you kind of start doing the same game, guessing, clicking it, and you start going, oh, that's what 500 yards is. It looks really close when you're out at wide open spaces.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, I always laugh when people go out, like you go out west and somebody's going to set up a 100-yard target to sight in. And you're like, dude, I could throw a rock and hit that. Like,
right. There's no way that's 100 yards. Yeah. They range it and you're like, are you sure? And they're like, 100 yards, 99, 101, 100. I promise it is.
Yeah.
Another thing is people think about using a rangefinder for long distances. And I mean, if you have I was going to say a 6.5, but it doesn't matter what it is. And if you've actually done a little practice and you have a scope where you dial for range and you're setting, you're on at 100 and you're dialing for whatever the yardage is, there's a difference between 200 and 275. I mean, there's adjustments to be made there and you go, oh, it's pretty close. It's not that much difference. Well, if you're set up for 100 yards because you're dialing everything, I think my take would be if you're dialing everything, you need to keep dialing everything. Like you have to know the range and then just make that adjustment really quickly. If you're going to wing it, then do the wing it method. And you do the old like, it's an inch and a half high at 100 and I'm 0 to 300. I'm good. Or I just buy a real flat shooting caliber. Okay, that could be an option. But these days, you guys are making it very easy to do the dial up as well. I mean, talk about how that has changed as far as the controls on the scope.
Well, I think one of the big things was for a long time, the world just accepted the fact that if you were going to get a scope that had, for example, MRAD turrets, you have MOA and MRAD, two different methods of measuring the same thing, which is angles in shooting. I always like to equate shooting guns to like shooting artillery. Everybody knows in the old movies, when they angle the cannon up, they're trying to shoot it further. And then, we're basically trying to do that with our hand cannons here. But yeah, so the turrets used to not match the reticle. You'd have an MOA reticle and MRAD turrets, or you'd have a mil reticle and MOA turrets. It was a hodgepodge. So, that luckily has been pretty well standardized across the industry. That was one thing that we did when we came out with the PST, the Viper PST rifle scopes back in the mid 2000s there. But, yeah, I mean, that's a huge deal. And then really just a lot of it has been education too, of people. So I mean, throughout all the videos that we've provided and things on social media and ballistics calculators now spitting out information in MOA and MRAD, not actually like just inches, stuff like that. I think people are now starting to have a lot more resources they can go to learn about what their turrets actually do. And then just encouraging people to use them. So it's not the days anymore where like, oh, this scope is zeroed, so those turrets are now sacred. Do not touch. It's, we mess with our turrets all the time. You screw with them, you bring it back to zero, and oh my gosh, the rifle scope is still zero. Yeah. We have reached that time.
It's like having a tuner built into your guitar. It's okay. We'll adjust it back. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the moment of truth. You guys do rifle scopes. You do red dots. You do binos. You do rangefinders. You do spotting scopes. You do tripods. We didn't even get into that. Really nice tripods. All the stuff you guys do, Jimmy. What's your favorite? What's your favorite Vortex product? The one that's just like, this is home, or the one you're most proud of?
Boy, it depends on the day you catch me, really.
You can pick two if you need to.
It changes a lot just because, I kind of we have the luxury of having access to many different types of things here. It's kind of like, oh, you want to get into ARs this week? Yeah, we'll shoot ARs or whatever, pistols. I really have gotten into like shooting my AR a lot more with the instructors down here at Edge. And so shooting my AR with the Spark Solar on top, the red dot, really simple, just uber battery life. It's kind of one of those products that I love because it's so simple. You set it up and you just go. So that's really cool.
The red dot optics for ARs. I mean, we have the micro red dots that are popular on pistols these days, but a AR size red dot is almost standard equipment for an AR these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's becoming like the iron sight, I mean, a lot of times if people buy an AR, which we've seen many people do in a frenzy over the last number of years, people buy an AR, and if they didn't necessarily have like a designated purpose for it, it's like, well, at least got to stick a red dot on this thing. Mm-hmm. And red dots are they're really capable. You can do a lot with them. You stick a magnifier behind them. Our micro 3X magnifier has also reignited my interest in red dots, because I used to be like, it's got to be a low power variable because I'm not a big fan of magnifiers. And then we came out with the micro 3X, and I was like, now I'm into this. Now, like, magnifiers and red dots are cool. Like, it makes sense. It works. And so that's why I've been putting that setup on a lot of my guns as of late. So
that's an interesting take, because that's another way to get there, right? Of having a dual setup where you've got a true red dot and you've got a magnifier you can turn on or flip over or whatever, engage. And it's a 3-power?
It is. Yep. Yeah. We have a 6-power one as well. I just use the 3-power one more often because, usually, we have our range here. We have a 50-yard range we do a lot of shooting on. So 3 is all I need. But yeah. Very
cool. Well, I know if people want to find out more, it's vortexoptics.com, right?
It is. Yep. Vortexoptics.com. And then, like I said, you can find all of our products there, and then Vortex Edge is on there as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you guys have gotten into the training world. I think a lot of times in the gun world, we like to talk about the gear and the products all the time, and it's great and it's fun. And I buy more stuff than I should or need, but also the emphasis for training is always there. And I always kind of like to say, like, Eddie Van Halen could make any guitar sound good because he was just a better guitar player than you or I, but it can be the same thing. I like that you guys are getting into the training part of it to go, hey, it's cool to have cool gear, but now make yourself proficient and be able to run this stuff. That's really cool.
Oh yeah. It's a really great time. People have a ton of fun. And I mean, there's no excuse anymore, I feel like, with the training opportunities that people have available to them, to just be somebody who just shrugs their shoulders and says, I just suck with a pistol. It's like, no, you don't have to suck with a pistol. Like, you do because you haven't tried enough or seeked out the right training or anything like that. I mean, you can use these tools that we have these days extremely proficiently, and it's not that hard to do. It just takes the right knowledge and the right reps and practice, and you can get there, and it's really awesome then what you're able to do.
Yeah. And I think if you get the right training, then you've got the knowledge of what I need to practice, and you'll be really surprised at how good you can get, whether it's with a pistol or all the way up to long range rifle shooting. You'll be impressed with the progress you can make. Jimmy, thanks for being on with us.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that's it for us. We'll see you next time on Gun Talk Nation.